Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Fathy Elshazly. I'm one of the ICU specialists in UK. And today we're going to have a session about EDIC, EDIC Critical Care MCQ. You know that MCQ exam in EDIC is about 100 questions. It used to be what's called Type K and Type A questions. Type A is just an MCQ, choose the best of answer out of 5, and Type K used to be a question with 4 answers, and you are supposed to answer them either true or false. And in the past, it used to be 50% and 50%, but then gradually they decreased the Type K questions, the true or false kind of questions. And the last one was about only 10 questions of Type K, true or false. And I think that according to what I read recently, that it's going to be, or the next exam is going to be, all of it is going to be best of 5 kind of questions. Although I'm not sure yet, but that, and I tried to look into the website of the European Society of Intensive Care Medicine, but still it's not clear yet if they're still going to use Type K questions, true or false kind of questions or not in the next one. But in this session, all of our questions are going to be best of 5 kind of questions, because that's going to be the most important part, or the most important issue of the exam. Most probably, even if we are going to answer all the kind of Type of K questions wrong, or even 50% of it wrong, it's not going to make too much impact in your result at the end of the exam. So I participated in this course with 51 kind of MCQ questions. Most of them are respiratory critical care. So allow me, please, to just start with the long questions first before the short kind of questions, because the trend or the pattern now that most of the societies, or especially the European Society of Critical Care, using as kind of clinical-based kind of questions. They are not going to give you just small questions. They are going to give you a clinical case and then the question at the end. They're just like the American kind of questions. And that's why my advice that try to answer as much as you can of MCQs, whatever the source is, whether American source, British source, any kind of Australian source, any kind of MCQ questions which you can have, try to answer them. That's a key to pass the exam. Answer as much as you can MCQ questions. Yes, you can read, but if you want to pass the exam, you have to answer as much as questions as possible, especially the MCQ ones. So let's start with the first question. A 20-year-old male has a road traffic accident, acquired severe traumatic brain injury. He was intubated in the scene and currently being admitted into the ICU, and the neurosurgeons opted for conservative management. What is the most appropriate ventilation strategy in brain injured patient? Any volunteer? Anyone would like to answer the question?
Yeah, it's B. Low tidal volume with normocapnia.
That's right, normocapnia, which avoids both increased intracranial and cerebral ischemia. Because as you know, hypercapnia and more hypocapnia cause obstruction of the jugular, obstruction of the carotid arteries, and so reduce the blood flow to the brain. And hypercapnia do the opposite thing, which increase the blood flow, and both of them might increase the intracranial pressure. So normocapnia is the key here. So it's strong protective strategy in all of them. And so the next question is a little bit long question. It's not related very much to the respiratory, but it's about mainly acid-base balance. But because it is very common question in the European Society of Intensive Care and the EDIC kind of exam, so I just wanted to bring it because most of the questions and because a lot of questions in the exam are usually acid-base balance and even in the OSCE as well. So a 40-year-old woman with past medical history of diabetes and acute lymphoblastic leukemia is admitted to the respiratory failure due to pneumonia. Labs on admission reveal relatively normal function but neutropenia and anemia. Her ICU stay is significant for persistent fevers despite appropriate broad-spectrum antibiotic therapy. By hospital day 4, she is started on amphotericin B to cover for invasive aspergillosis. On day 4, the following labs were obtained. Labs sodium 144 milliequivalent or millimole per liter, potassium 2.6 milliequivalent per liter, chloride 125, carbon dioxide 10 milliequivalent per liter, blood urine nitrogen 35, calcium 8.2, creatinine 1.6, albumin 3 grams, urine pH 6, sodium 35, chloride 60, and potassium 46. So which of the following is the most likely cause of these patients' metabolic findings? I know it's a long kind of question, but it comes in the exam, so I had to bring it. Any volunteer?
This is type 1 RTA.
Type 1, great. Why did you say that? Why did you say that?
Because potassium is low here and the bicarbonate is extremely low. It is less than 15 MEQ. And, amphotericin B cause type 1 RTA.
Great. Okay. Well, you're right, actually. So, where is my screen? So, you're right, it's type 1. Type 1, the amphotericin B is a broad-spectrum antifungal agent, which is used a lot in the ICU. So, it's usually what happens that usually what it does to the fungus, it usually can does as well to the renal tubular membranes, and that's why it can affect the distal renal tubular membrane permeability, causing this kind of tubular dysfunction. And of course, the hallmark is the hypokalemia and urine pH, as you mentioned. Type 2 is more common infiltrative disease like Sjögren's syndrome and multiple myeloma. Usually have lower urine pH and less severe metabolic acidosis. Type 4 usually associated with hyperkalemia, not hypokalemia. And type 3, of course, is the term which is not longer be used. It's usually being considered a subtype now of type 1.